Hey, Elliot.
Hey, Brian.
What's the talk at the table?
Today, we are sitting down with one of our favorite designers in TTRPGs. You might have heard of such games as Sleepaway, Wander Home, and the brand new Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast. Please welcome the editorial director and co-founder of Possum Creek Games, Jay Dragon. Welcome to the table. So good to see you.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here in our I think this is, we were joking before I call this is maybe the two of you have done about a dozen different episodes of Customer Davis Bed Breakfast, and I'm so excited that it's finally we get to talk about it, and we can be here and talk about it.
Yeah.
I'm so close to holding it in my hands.
excited.
I just
Literally,
can't wait.
It's an any day thing. We are our poor office manager right now. The books are in America. They're on their way to the warehouse. It's supposed to be yesterday or the day before, right? It's this kind of like any day now kind of thing. By the time the episode comes out, hopefully, dear God, they'll be.
You guys have like a Yazeba's doomsday clock in the office. It's like we're 4 minutes from Yazeba's.
It feels, the problem is we have that, and it's like -1 minutes, right? And so we're all like, we're the worst. Like, it's the feeling of like, you go to a doctor's appointment and the doctor is late, right? You're sitting in the waiting room and it's like 10 minutes over and you're like, did I fuck up? Am I supposed to not here? It's that emotion, but with 32 tons of book.
Yeah.
Man, I just want to real quick sit in that 32 tons of books.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's that? 60 is 2,000 pounds a ton?
Yes.
64,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
Yep.
How many shipping containers is that?
I don't know. There's a certain point where my brain starts to black out, and I don't retain those numbers. I just forward those emails to the office manager, and I'm like, can you think about this for me, please?
I did just want to really harp on that number, because a lot of what we want to talk about in this conversation is the process of going from funding to fulfillment and all the difficulties of physical production. And I think that it's important to note for Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast that it is 32 tons of book. This is a massive, complicated project and being done at a very large scale, despite being a relatively indie outfit.
Yes, absolutely. I do. So every year I publish an end of year retrospective on Possum Creek, and the past 2 years have featured headings along the lines of Yazeba's is too big. I think that this is genuinely I think we will pull through, but I also think that we did bite off more than we could chew. And I think maybe I'll talk about this more later as well. There's a sense of under capitalism, there's the pressure to grow, and we're not interested in playing that. But there is a way that making enormous projects like this creates an enormous amount of pressure to grow and to feed into the machine. And so in addition to there being just a logistical enormous challenge, a project of this scale actually starts to write ethical challenges as well, and moral personal challenges. And so that's been, the past year of physical fulfillment we released the PDF, released the online version a year ago. And now it's all right, it's been, a full year of managing logistics, and that it's incredibly complicated and it's enormous, and it's too big for us on a certain level. And look, we're doing it, but
too big to fail.
Yeah.
I would kind of love to dig in on the two halves of what you just said of there are logistical and technical difficulties that also at this scale can also lead to ethical difficulties. So I guess to start that, I want to talk about the differences and the difficulties that you encounter with this project of both technical and logistical, and then how those lead into ethical difficulties. And starting with the former, because this is a very complicated book, a very complicated set of books that is in a slip cover, and it's a large book, lots of art, difficulty shipping,
stickers.
What were some of the expected challenges, and then what were some of the wildly unexpected challenges that come up in a production like this on the logistical side?
So things we knew going in, right? We knew that Yazebas had to be made by there are not that many companies that do mixed media printing, right? So Mixam is our default for very small projects. Like, we need another 200 copies of Sleepaway. We print it out through Mixam. That's fine. Yazebas is a book. It's stickers. It's an envelope. It needs a little piece of paper on the back of that, so that the back cover is still visible when you see it in the store, right? Because you need to see the back material, but behind the book is where the stickers and the envelope are. So we need to put something behind, like over that. And then that needs to be shrink wrap, right? And that's just the book. That's not the box set. That's not any other materials.
Right.
And so that cannot be done, right? That needs actually a board game publisher. That's like an experience set that most book publishers don't have. You need someone who knows how to work with board games, knows how to mix media like that. Generally, that means you need to go to China, right? So we printed Yazebas in China, Panda Manufacturing. We knew from it, kind of talk that they're a little expensive, but they do good work, and we're willing to kind of take a little bit of that bite in exchange for making sure the book is really good. An advantage is that they consolidate, that they basically multiple different factories are producing different elements of the product, and then they consolidate it and they put it together into the finished box. Whereas like other manufacturers will like make the raw stuff and then be like, yeah, there you go. Here's 1,000 meeples. The more you will. So we put a lot of work into product design. Right? We had multiple proofs shipped over. We had the first proof of both the book and the box set was entirely blank. It was literally like all white, just this like white box that contained the materials kind of arranged where they would be, but it's all blank. And then, from there, okay, cool, let's get another proof and another proof. And there are all these proofs, so we're kind of marking them up and thinking about them. And that was expected. The process took longer than we thought it would, but this was also our first time doing a process like this. Those logistic complexities we accounted for. Shipping knew would be a nightmare. Shipping is always a nightmare. Shipping freight is kind of our first time doing freight. So there was customs we had to clear, and there was like international stuff we had to clear. It's a lot of big first times we were doing on this project. Unexpected ones. I think one of the big unexpected ones is is having to be so particular. Is having to really be like, okay, like we can make this choice or that choice. How much does that difference cost? Right? How much does one conversation was around the coins, right? The coins that come in the box, that there's a set of coins. We need to make them out of a certain material, make sure they're heavy enough to flip well, right? Because cheap plastic coins suck to flip. So we kind of spent a lot of back and forth on that. It wasn't any out of the ordinary. Like many larger companies do this all the time. But for us, it was our first time having these conversations and doing this work. And so it was kind of adapting to all of that, and incorporating that into our rhythms. Where like a lot of Possum Creek, philosophically, we tend to try to kind of take things easy. Like we really avoid crunch if we can help it. We really want to like just make stuff at our pace. And when that combines with logistical timelines, it means there's stuff that happens where it's like, actually, here's a good little mode to show how complex this shit can get. The books finish printing in November, right? So in November, the books are all done and are in their warehouse. December, everyone in the US is on holiday. Everyone in the UK is on holiday. And we're coordinating with a UK freight company, and Panda Manufacturing is based out of the UK. So it's very hard to coordinate shipping in December. That's the holidays. Everything's more expensive. The UK is on holiday. January, Possum Creek is on holiday, right? I'm visiting my father. Grubby is getting surgery. We're out of town. So we can't really coordinate much in January. February is Chinese New Year. So what that meant is that little things, right, compound. And there's all these different agents involved. And so delays at every single point of that compound and escalate so fast. I think that was kind of the largest logistical challenge.
There's something you said in there I want to kind of pick at a little bit. You talked about the coins and like the particularities of this production. And I really want to talk about where do those particularities of production and creating this like what is ultimately a luxury item meet mechanics? How much is it about making something like that is a good product for people to buy versus just what you need to play the game in the smoothest, most seamless way possible? Where do those two kind of ideas of mechanics, like game design and particularities of production meet?
I think one of the most interesting instances of this is in the paper of the book itself, which is that it was very difficult to find paper in the book that was glossy enough that the art would look good, because matte paper would make the art look very dull. But glossy paper, you can't write on. So how do you find that balance within the book itself? How do you find paper that is matte enough that pencil will hold on it, but glossy enough that the art will look good? So the paper is less glossy than the paper in Wanderhome. It's a bit more satin, but it took a little bit of finagling to find the right paper quality. There are other things too. Like there are things that even I'm, like there's nitpicks, of course, but there's moments like in the Ledger, which is the book that accompanies in the box set, and you can also pick it up on its own. It's like a black and white printout of basically all the materials you need to play, like all the character sheets, and like includes like chapter aids. So if you're like playing a chapter, you've got like a little printout to make that easier. The Ledger, I'm really proud of the Ledger. It's perforated, but it is not entirely perforated. All of the pages, all the character sheets and the printouts are perforated, but the shelves and the extra tracks and the guest book, which like there's a little guest book at the front of the Ledger where people can like sign their names when they play, which I adore. I have been filling it up all the past few months. I've got my own copy. I've been filling it up, and it's so sweet to be like, oh, and there's just where I played with Steve Jackson. There's where I played with Quinn's. Like, just feel it's very like there's a very like emotional quality to that. But it's a thing where like that's not perforated, right? So that part of the book isn't perforated, and so like okay, like those little weird choices around like how does this game sit as a physical object was something we considered constantly throughout the design. Like the book was built to be physical, but even through printing, it was like okay, we need all these little micro choices need to be balanced and weighed against like how much is it going to fucking cost, right? Like, what's the best paper that also isn't going to add an extra $3 per book, right? That kind of thing.
Did that ever flip around on itself to something about the physical production changed something mechanically in the design?
I don't think so. I think that the physical process flowed very one way. I think a lot of that is because of the fact that the game was made, released digitally, and then manufactured. So the conversations were much more, but like, I think that having now done this, if we were to do Yazebas again, which we wouldn't, but if we were to do an expansion or something small, we have supplements, but we have zines, but we're doing smaller things. We have a better sense now of how those relate to each other, and also like how these things feed together. And so there'll be more things that build on the lessons we've learned. But because the game was made and then manufactured, a lot of those choices kind of were made, and then it was like, okay, how do we make this work?
Man, I really love the detail that I never would have thought of like, you want this book to be able to write in it, you want to be able to like love it, and you have to consider the paper quality of it. And it's like, it's one of those things that the second you say it, it makes 100% sense. Like, of course. But from the outside, you would think, oh, you pick the paper, you get a sample and you look at it, and you're like, oh, I like the look of that one better, I guess. But to take the extra time of that detail is the difference between, I mean, the difference in that detail is everything.
And as I said, there's little nitpick things. Like I could say, like, oh well, the stickers are more glossy than the interior paper. They're not as good to write on with pencil. They're a little tricky. And I was like, I realized that, and I was like, oh shit, can we change this? It was like, well, most of the stickers are printed already, so it'll be about another $10,000 if you want to redo all the stickers. And I was like, is this slight imperfection worth the logistical reality of another? No, it is not, right? There's no world that's pure. That's not it at all. That's impossible.
Right.
So,
right.
Like, what is this worth? Half of my student loan debt to fit? The answer is absolutely not. In no world is that the case.
When you start putting anything in those terms, you start losing the meaning behind them a little bit.
Look, there's business money and there's me money, and my money is measured in tens and ones, and business money is scary and alien and like different, horrible, absolutely distressing. But yeah, so like that those are those kind of factors where it's like there's sometimes you have to concede to the reality, right? That like will I don't think it'll be. I think it'll be fine. I think it'll be good. And like I've written on them with pencil. It's fine. I long in my heart for the perfect thing, but the perfect is the enemy of the finished.
Yeah, 100%.
So I would rather, print run number 2, right? When we print more stick, there's all these, it's never done. It's never actually done. You think of a game being done when you, like, as a game designer, you think of a game being done as when you finish the draft, and as a publisher, you think of it being done when you, like, release it to the world. And the truth of the matter is that Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast is a collaborative project that has involved about, I would maybe wager 50 people. I haven't actually counted them up over the course of 5 years. And I'm in a position where, as editorial director, it's my job now to steward that creation and to take care of it. And say with Wanderhome, right? These are things that I've been involved in the creation of in sometimes very major ways. But the creation, what feels like the most immediate, most important part of art, actually is like, okay, boom, I've made this baby. And now my real job is that the next 20 years of my life are about taking care of this baby, right? That like my job is always on some level that I have made these things and I have to steward them and usher them through the world safely. And so the creation is always just the first step of that. It's always just like getting it out into the world and getting it known. And then everything after that is that I have this beautiful, imperfect, wonderful creation that I love and hate and care for and am obsessed with and wish I could rip apart. And I must gently shepherd it through, like contracts and expansions and translations and all the people who want to take a piece of it for their own and figure out which ones are going to be good and which ones are going to be bad and let it make its tangled way through the world. And that's just my job for the next however long, right? Until it loses cultural relevance, I guess. And then I make a second edition, right? So it never, it's when I quit RPGs, right? Like,
right.
It is really interesting to, I think from the outside, even as involved as I am in game design, it's so easy to fall into the trap of you see the Kickstarter, the Indiegogo, or the crowdfunding, and like, that's a big phase. And then the release is the end. And you forget about that section in between. That's a whole bunch of work to bring the thing into the world. And then the section after, which we've been discussing a little more on the show, of like the care of the community and of the game itself, of like, the job's not over when the thing's out. You've got to continue fostering that community. Otherwise, people are going to put it down. And after you've put so much work into it, you want people to continue lifting it up.
Precisely. And it's the community, and it's the fact that, like, okay, I wrote Wanderhome when I was 22. Can you think of a thing you made when you were 22? And imagine that the rest of your life is about loving and promoting and caring for that thing.
Nightmare.
Right? Kind of a nightmare. But
but I didn't make Wanderhome when I was 22.
To be fair, like Steven Spielberg made Jaws when he was like 25 or something.
Yeah,
so you're in fun company, I guess.
Sure, yeah, me and Steven. I just, my point is not to brag. The point of that was not to be like,
no,
and then like Pablo Picasso, I don't know, did crazy shit when he was 5 or whatever. I don't know. My point is more just that, like, you make a thing kind of in like a moment of youthful desire, and then it's like, okay, I must. And like even now, once I look back on Wanderhome, I just, like right now, like Yazeba, and there's a part of me where I'm like, I'm a different creator now. There are choices in here that I wouldn't make. There are like, I'll talk to people about the philosophy of Wanderhome, and I'll talk about like, oh well, Wanderhome claims this in the text. Like this is the argument Wanderhome advances, and I'm very careful about that because I'm never saying this is what I believe about violence, about trauma, about community, about care. I'm always like, well, this is what the text of Wanderhome is saying. This is my interpretation of the text laid down. Because it's been long enough that I too, I don't, the author does not have a special privileged place. I interpret the text as well as anyone. I'm looking at the text and trying to figure out what it means and applying that interpretation to the way I talk about it. And I don't know if I agree with everything that Wanderhome claims. I don't know if I agree with everything Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast claims. I don't know if I even can fully articulate yet the claims made by Yazeba's about community, about care, about existing together. So and then I know in the work I'm doing right now, right? Like those make claims well. So it's art, and art never gets to sit easy, right? But you have to like care for it, and you have to like kind of bring it to people, and you have to kind of like I have to remind myself it's like, oh, Wanderhome is really big, and then I go to like a trade show, right? And I'm like surrounded by board game people. They're all like, oh, this is such a weird thing. I've never seen anything like this before. I'm like aware that I am the weirdest game designer at the trade show in RPGs, and it's like, oh, this is like, 'cause it's so used to being like, oh well, and this is the thing everyone knows, and then it's like, right, but also this is still young. This is still a baby. This is still, it has not settled into any kind of uncomfortable
It's a toddler at best.
toddler at best, and yeah, Yazebas is arguably not even born yet. Yazebas has been born 5 times and is yet still not born, right? The old world is dying and the new the old games are dying and the new games are struggling to be born. Now it's the time of monsters.
There's a really interesting emotional and business challenge here that I wanted to talk about, and I feel this on a much smaller scale of having made Project Echo last year and just finding myself even like a year later just doing the first kind of event that felt like I got to like really engage with people who played it, and I was like, oh, like I've reached an endpoint with this game in my mind, but there are still people discovering it for the first time. And I think like one of the challenges of like spending as much time, I imagine, as you have with Yazeba's 2 years of production, 3 years before that of design and playtesting and all that, is by the time you get to this point, you're faced with the emotions of, like you said, not necessarily agreeing with it where it's at, but you got to sell the thing and support it and market it and everything. And I'm kind of curious, like, how do you handle those needs of like the business of like, I have really complex emotions about this thing now, but I have to market it to everyone like I am still day one of design and playtesting excited about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think there's like a lot of answers there because I think about that all the time. That's like one of my big things I've been dwelling on. On one level, I'm very lucky because I wasn't the only creator on Yazebas, right? There was Maisie Veselak was my co-creator. There were two other writers on the team, Mercedes and Lily. That means that the text can still surprise me. There are things that I didn't write. So I'll play a chapter and then halfway through be like, oh hey, this is Minesweeper. I didn't realize this chapter was Minesweeper. That's sick as hell. I love that. And suddenly I'm like, oh wait, I get to rethink this part of the game. So that helps, right? Is that I get to shell the parts of the game that I didn't make, and that way I kind of get to take a little bit of the weight off my shoulders. Second thing is it's an exercise in self love, right? Is that it's a process of going back to a thing I made when I was younger and remembering that love and that excitement and treasuring that I live in a post Yazeba's world, right? I live in the future. I live in the world of I've been thinking about the things that Yazeba says about game design for like 3 or 4 years. And I think Yazeba's has some really revolutionary things to say about game design. I think that I can tell when someone else is living in a post Yazeba's world. I look at their game and I can see that there are little things that are like, oh, this is something has clicked for you in a way that through Yazeba's. I can spot that. And I can spot that with one armed. I can see when someone has when there's something that's clicked together from there. And so I live in that world. And most people don't, right? Most people live in a like I'd say there are some people who live in a like an immediately post Yazeba's game design world. There's a lot of people who don't, who aren't thinking about it at all, right? Who haven't had the opportunity to think about it at all for one reason or another, and or just don't want to. Sure, that's not. I'm not trying to say that it's gonna blow everyone's minds, but so I have to be like, all right, I live in the future. I have experienced like all these things that are now for me very passe are very exciting for anyone who's not engaged with them. So I have to kind of evangelize my past self, like the things that influenced, that like changed me in the past, and be like, this is the thing that I found very exciting when it was first happening, right? And now it's hard for me to be excited about it because I've just been sitting with it for 4 years, 5 years. But like for you, you've never considered that a game could do this before. So let me blow your mind, right? There's a game I play with when showing off PSA Buzz where I flip from chapter to chapter. I'll go, well, this chapter uses like MOBA battle map rules. And this chapter uses a hex grid. And this chapter, like you like play hide and seek. And you're like, oh, well, there could be any chapter in here. And there could be. What if I told you there's an OSR chapter in here? And then I flip to the part of the book that has the rules for playing like a trad D&D style version of Gertrude's favorite trashy fantasy novel. And it's just a funny magic trick on someone who's very familiar with Dungeons and Dragons to be like, here's the thing you are from, like, here is a game that can do that. Like, I can set you up to think that this game can have anything inside of it. Like, that's kind of the magic of like it's like I've set up a magic trick for myself and I'm paying it off, right? And so it's like learning the magic tricks has been really important for me, is being able to be like, I know the parts of this game that blew my mind when we came up with them, and so I can come to you and figure out on what level are those going to blow your mind, right?
I love that, the magic trick.
There's an element to what you just said that is just really making me giddy, because I've only read basically what of Yazeba's we played on my first dungeon, because I very deliberately wanted to like save this present for when I had the physical book. And now you're just talking about all this stuff and I'm like, I can't wait. I'm just giddy to get this book and like flip through it and really like discover all that stuff that I've been like very deliberately being like, no, wait for your present, wait for it to arrive.
So close any day now.
Can't wait.
Midnight Muscadines is a cozy, dark tabletop role-playing game where light and shadow intertwine in a fractured world. Players take on the roles of marmoteers, brave adventurers who journey into the untamed wilderness to collect the elusive Midnight Muscadines, craft magical jams, and protect the fragile light of Nim. Through collaborative storytelling and resourceful gameplay, players weave tales of courage, community, and the pursuit of balance. Will you preserve the light, uncover the truths hidden in the shadows, or reshape the balance of the world forever? Midnight Muscadines is perfect for fans of Studio Ghibli and Sea of Stars, who seek to capture the magic of exploration and the heartfelt adventure in a world where small heroes make a big impact. Play Midnight Muscadines as a traditional GM'd game, GMless, or even solo. Midnight Muscadines is crowdfunding now on BackerKit. Join the campaign at pandeongames.com/muscadines.
I'm Quinns of tabletop role-playing game review show Quinn's Quest, and this is Play to Find Out. Play to Find Out is an actual play podcast that brings notorious old games from the 80s and 90s back to the table. Each season of Play to Find Out, I'm joined by Emily Johnson and Rob Morgan.
Good? Nervous?
Yeah.
You both looked at each other really concerned, like you think what's about to happen is going to be unpleasant. And frankly, I think that's rude.
And together, we explore the TTRPGs of ages gone by. Our goal, to separate the TTRPGs that deserve to be remembered from those that maybe don't. I don't know, Emily. It was the 80s.
Also,
a lot of people were on cocaine. We blow the dust from decrepit systems to learn how they work. Your 100 on the encounter table bursts out. Right, you've encountered a bug. Get ready. Don't laugh.
There's one get ready for a fog.
Don't laugh. Encounter their unique quirks.
I do finger guns to cover up how I wince.
A weird thing happens as you do finger guns.
Oh no.
And I'm hoping that the Quinn's Quest community will join us in exploring these games too. If you this up, cannot describe to you how much your adventure ends here.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because the best way to learn is to play to find out. Play to Find Out is available now on the Quinn's Quest Patreon, but the first episode of each series streams for free on the Quinn's Quest YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Anyway, you failed the Earthtech roll, and you made jokes while I was doing my exposition, so you don't get to hear any more.
No, come on.
I was shook as...
There's an interesting thing there in this magic trick that you're talking about that I feel like was a and forgive my use of this word, but a bit of a like maybe like trapping that you guys fell into with Wanderhome of like Wanderhome on its surface, people see cozy anthropomorphic animals and they sort of often stop at that surface level understanding. And then when you actually read the text and you play, you see that there is like this commentary on violence and like a post-violence society and the trauma of that and homelessness and all of these themes that emerge when you go a surface level deeper. And I imagine that there's some version of that for Yazeba's where like Brian is saying, like, I know the chapters we played, while varying in tone, all sit within this Saturday morning cartoon vibe. But I know from talking to you and like going deeper into the book that this book goes deep. You know, like there's an OSR after chapter, there's a whole new tone of chapter that gets introduced at some point. Heavy, I can't remember the exact phrasing. Is that what it is?
There's the heavy chapters start to show up later in the book. Yeah, there's there tags. There's one that's there's a car crash. It's the darkest chapter in the book, I would say. There's a chapter that is where you play out a year of school, like in montage format, which even has a bizarre little moment. This is one of my favorite jokes in the game. Is the year of school? It's a chapter that's like 3 hours to play out. Halfway through during winter break, it's like, stop. If you'd like, you can play a winter themed chapter. You can take a break from this chapter, go play a different chapter, and come back. Which is so. I don't think anyone has ever done that. I think it's just so like on its face. Like we're midway through a full 3 hour game of Yazeba's that is this one chapter. Let's stop and play a different chapter. But like there's dark stuff. It's to me, it is a lot like a Saturday morning cartoon in that, like, you know, like think about Adventure Time, right? Where it's like Adventure Time, you got these like delightful, silly little episodes, and it's like, oh, cute, fun. And then you sit with them long enough, you start watching them in sequence, they start to tie together weirdly. And you're like, oh, wait, whoa, hold on. And then like, you know, they like these deeper plots begin to thread together. And the trick and the challenge with RPGs is always that you can never tell quite the whole story. I want to complain about someone who is wrong on Twitter. And I feel bad doing it because this person seems lovely and their post was not engaged with. I found it because I vanity searched. Oh, well. I feel bad.
Hey,
I hope
fine.
that they don't listen to this, or if they do, I hope they understand that I think that they're probably a lovely person. They called Wanderhome. They were talking about how they think Wanderhome is bad, which okay. They were like it's very all surface. And they're like, there's so many interesting ideas in it, but it never goes anywhere with them, right? There's all this stuff about rebellion and war and trauma and hurt, but the text never does anything with it. And I want to just grab this person by the shoulders and be like, I can't. I'm the game designer. I don't get to go there. That's not my place to go. That's your place to go. You play the game and you take those elements and you go nuts with them. But there's a way where, as a game designer, it's like you never get to follow all the steps. You never get to like you get to establish something and then suggest a lot of stuff outside of it, but you can't ever connect all the dots together. It's a little like complaining about a connect the dots thing and being like, this would be really interesting if there were lines, but it's just all dots. It's like,
that's really good.
I need you to do it.
Really good.
That's on you. That's your job. It's your turn now. I've given you a gift. Give me a gift back, right?
The thing that makes me think of is like in music theory when there's a chord is like a couple of notes that make a certain sound, and when you have an unresolved chord, it's because it's missing a note. And even if you don't know music theory or if you don't know what the notes are, if you hear two notes without the third, your brain is like screaming at you of, I want that third note. And the like cognitive dissonance of a game designer of having to stop at two notes so that someone else can fill in the third and have that emotional experience.
You know, the thing that it's like is that a game designer is not a composer of music, right? I don't sit down, I don't write a sonata out. I'm not Mozart. I'm like one of the people at the jam, right? Like we're all sitting around riffing on our instruments, and I set it up for you, right? I play the unresolved chord, I'm going hard on it, and that point of that is that someone else needs to jump in and add a layer to it and resolve it and take it to the next level, right? Like I can't just go do a solo in the middle of our jam session because that is missing the point, right? This is we're doing something together. And so it's that I think people expect game designers to be conductors, and that all that does is limit your own function and your own role there, right? That, like, ultimately, I'm not telling you, I'm giving you gifts. That's how I've really been thinking about it a lot. Is the idea of like a game book is just a pile of gifts and they're invitations, and they wield no control. They're areas of play.
It's like half a conversation.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you couldn't judge the quality of a conversation if you just got one person's half of the transcript.
And it's like I can, you can take a game, right? You can take it and you can like review the text of the game. But you have to understand the game text is like, yeah, as you're saying, it is half a conversation. It's waiting for the reply. It's setting up a reply. Some of the arguments Wanderhome makes philosophically, I'm not super satisfied with, one degree or another. I'm very interested, or I think maybe it makes arguments, but maybe it doesn't make the arguments as strong as I want them to. And I'm very interested in when people take Wanderhome and they disagree with it, right? I wrote an article recently called "Rules Are a Cage and I'm a Puppy Girl," which is kind of about the idea of game design is about creating restrictions you can pull on, and talking about how in Wanderhome says no violence, and the expectation there is like you can get as close to violence as you want, right? You can push up against that line as much as you want. And people are like, oh, well, no one plays Wanderhome that way. They're all just go for the cutesy thing. It stays as far away from the violence as possible. I'm like, some people do that, but that's not just, I think Yazeba's is similar. Yazeba's sets up this kind of cutesy environment. And what you do with that is on you, right? I'm not telling you to go one way or the other way. I know Quinn's really wants to do like a dark, like go hard and dark on Yazeba. So I think that'll be fascinating. I think that there's a lot of deep emotional play available in Yazeba's if you chase after it, if you grab it. But you have to grab it to be willing with a group to be like, let's go for it, right? It's less on the surface than Wanderhome is. It's more willing to just be goofy with it. And there's reasons for that, right? It's because Yazeba's is a game where different people are playing the same characters. So you don't, and like the characters are so solid that you don't want their interiority to be too bound by the game. You want it possible for one person to play Sal one way and another person to play Sal a completely different way, for that to feel in alignment. But you can go dark, right? You can go heavy. You can play it with it however you want. I think it's cool as hell. I think that the game text does not restrict. I don't think it has the power to restrict.
It's an interesting sort of tension that like we've talked about a little bit before about the way that people are willing to approach Dungeons and Dragons, that they don't give the same kind of thought to approaching other games. Like I love that Quinn's is looking at Yazeba's and is like, how can I take this big playground and drive it towards this kind of tone that I want, when that's a way that like people see Dungeons and Dragons and they're like, oh, I want to drive it in this direction and this direction. But I think there's a mental trapping people fall in where they're like, oh, this indie game looks like this kind of experience, so I can only use it to have that experience. And it's like, no, you still have the freedom of tone adaptability.
I think games are more like monkey bars than they are like, I don't know, guided tours, right? Like games like, here's a space, what do you do with it, right? I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been working on a game about wizards, and the game's mechanics are built to kind of make you suck, right? Like you're a wizard and you're kind of caught up in patriarchy, and you inevitably, if you look back on, like you go through 6 months and you look back on your actions, you're like, wow, I never spent time with my wife in the past 6 months. She's been cooking and cleaning for me for the past 6 months. I've not once spent time with her. I'm an asshole, right? Like just on like even if you're trying to play a good character, the game steers you that way, mechanically through the pressures of the mechanics. And I'm very interested in being like, well, what do you do with that, right? Do you make mechanically suboptimal choices in order to spend time with your wife and kids? Or do you accept the fact that you're a jerk and lean into it? Wow, do you try and balance those? What do you do? Because I don't think that the game is very interesting when it says, like, you are a jerk and you must be a jerk, and this is what it is. I'm much more interested in a game that says you are caught up in a web of social pressures that lead you inevitably to doing cruel things to other people. What can you do about that? Right? Where do you go from there? Or do you accept it, or do you fight back, or do you? And both of those are interesting to me, right? I'm not interested in dictating that you must do one of those, right? Yazeba says, here's the scenario. Here are the mechanics of how things play out. Do you accept that? Do you reject it? Do you lean into it? Do you pull away from it? Those are all you. That's all in your hands, right? Sal has one journey that I like a lot, because Sal's trying to become a famous musician, and after a pretty easy first journey, second journey requires Sal. The second step of it requires Sal to like do all these things, like write a letter to an agent and like get a fan and show off his music. And unless you are paying attention to the journey, unless you know Sal well enough to pay attention to the journey and gear towards it, pretty much none of those things are going to come up regularly, naturally in play, right? It's very often, like Yazeba has a similar journey of a checklist of people she needs to be mean to. That one's very easy. She's just incidentally mean to people all the time. So you'll realize you checked off 3 of those not meaning to. But Sal, it's like, when are you recording a record? Like, when does that come up when, like, in any other chapter? So it's something you have to fight for if you want Sal to become famous. Which is what it is, right? You can't just like glide into it. You have to fight for it. So that's really cool to me. I think that's great. I think it's really cool if you also look at that and you're like, Sal doesn't want to be famous. Screw that. I don't care about attracting a diehard fan. I'm just going to keep going forward with my thing. That's also great. That's also good. Both of those are compelling responses to Sal's journey.
But the half conversation critique would be, there's no way for me to, there's no chapter where I write a letter to an agent.
Yeah, exactly. Without understanding that it's like, I'm waiting, or like people, you look at Yazeba's character and it's like, wow, where's, like, oh, they feel a little one-dimensional. They feel a little like, what's the sad part? What's the dark part? Where's their interiority? And it's like, well, if I give you all that, then like, what are you left to come up with, right? Like, Yazeba restricts so many choices you get to make that normally you get to make in an RPG, that the choices it doesn't restrict become really, really important. And one of those is the interior lives of the characters. And so a lot of the like figuring out why, what's going, like, you can think about Yazeba in a pretty heavy way. You can look at Sal and be like, Sal's had a rough life, right? If you read the interstitial fiction, if you piece together, there's what page is that? Oh, there's one interstitial fiction piece that is just downright incredibly dark. It's in the back of the book. It's page 330. Hey Kid's Arrival, in which Yazeba kills someone.
Can't wait to read this book.
Like, you read that and it totally reinterprets Hey Kid and Yazeba's relationship, and radically reinterprets. Like, you can use that if you want to backread a lot of the text and be like, well, what does this change? What does this reveal to me? How do I rethink these characters differently than how I thought of them before as a result of engaging with the rest of the text? Or you can just read the text as it is and take each step as you go. Both are open and available, right? It's a pile of gifts. Engage with the gifts how you go.
So I want to take us back all the way back to where we started when we were originally talking about difficulties logistically and how those can turn into ethical difficulties with a project of this scale and complexity. In the same way that I wouldn't have had a concept of the paper quality being so important for in terms of the game, I don't necessarily have a great concept of what the ethical challenges could be. Could you talk about where you found those challenges came up and how you resolved them?
So I think here's the way to think about. So when your RPG company, right, the group of people you're doing this with is like a boat. And the journey of getting it done is like sailing through an ocean. That's the metaphor I kind of use, right? And a little zine Kickstarter is like taking your your little one-person boat through your little bay, right? It's a good practice. It's shallow waters. And if you capsize, you'll be fine, right? You'll float back up to the water and you'll right your boat again and you'll get back from there. You'll be wet, but you'll be okay, right? Possum Creek is not a big boat. Possum Creek we have 3 full-time employees and 2 of them are the founders, right? So we are barely not a sole proprietorship, right? We are barely a little company. We have a part-time employee and we have a lot of freelance folks. That's not a big boat. We make a lot of money. We spend a lot of money, right? We have kind of a small ship. Yazeba's is a very choppy, heavy area of the sea. It's a very deep ocean. It's a very big thing. It's a beautiful work of art, but it's huge. And the process of its creation has been stormy and dark and very deep. I'm very aware of the fact that if the boat capsizes, it is not like capsizing a boat in your day, right? It is not like knocking over your little one-person ship. There are people's livelihoods at stake who are not me, right? And we have a few options in this situation, right? Okay, option number one, right, is we scale back the project, right, which would suck. I don't want Yazebas is the passion, right? But that would be safe. That'd be less risk for everyone involved. That'd be me making sure that everyone involved, right, keeps their careers, keeps their jobs, and keeps their income. Right? Option number two, we grow the boat, right? We hire more people. We expand our product line. We get in new sources of income. We get investors. We play the game. We play the capitalism game, right? Because that's the thing, is endless growth. If you keep growing, you can do deeper and deeper waters, but you keep fucking growing, and you're a corporation now, right? And now suddenly, next thing you know, my full-time job is CEO, and I'm balancing the livelihoods of a dozen people, right? And we're taking on IP projects and making franchise deals and playing that game. And I don't want that. That, to me, that's ethically bad, right? On the level of, I don't want that. I just don't, right? There's a lot of reasons why that is kind of thought of as like, oh, become the next Free League, become the next Magpie Games. Much love to Free League, much love to Magpie. I know the folks involved in both of those companies. I don't want Possum Creek to be the next Magpie Games. That is horrible. But you want to weather deep waters, grow bigger, right? And option number three is tie yourself to a larger ship. Find another larger ship. Sell your company to that, or at the very least partner up, right? And then there's advantages to that, right? Their bigger ship can weather the highs and lows of the waves much better. They are okay if a big wave comes by, it would drown your ship, but they can just take it. But what if they're a bad ship? How can you trust them, right? Like, who can you trust? And those are the ethical things of just running a company and making a big project. That's why I say that we'll never do anything as big as Yazebas again on our own. And it's not because, I don't know how to do something that big. It's because to do something that big again would mean we need to get bigger. And Possum Creek should not get bigger. It should remain a workshop space. It should remain a creative little nexus. It should not become a giant corporation. I think that's the bad ending. That's the sign that I've fucked up and lost control of the plot. And maybe in 5 years, when we listen back on this podcast, there's going to be a lot of dramatic irony one way or the other. And I don't know. I have no control of the future. But that's where it sits for me right now.
Possum Creek's owned by Hasbro in 5 years.
Hey, at least that means I got a cushy sellout deal, right? At least that means Hasbro wrote me a big fat check.
At least you sold out good.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, that's frankly, frankly, selling the company itself is one of the less morally ambiguous options for me, because it's just like, I'm divesting of this thing I've made, and I'm going to go do other things. I'm going to go make other creative projects and not worry about it. That's a better ending. Worst ending is probably this interview in 5 years is with Jay Dragon's CEO, and I don't goddamn know, right? Like, oh, sorry, let me take a break from being the project. Like, we're working on the TV show right now, the Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast TV show, and spin-off McDonald's Happy Meal toys. We're gonna take a quick break from that to do like old nostalgia. That would be horrible. So that
you'd have a killer pantsuit.
Oh God, yeah, I'd rock the Hillary Clinton. So that would be bad, right? That's the worst. So that's the ethical concerns, and that's just for the big company, and that is also not even accounting for the fact that, like, sure, I'm not about growing bigger and succeeding. There's also just failing is ethically, like, failing means that I would have to break a promise to a lot of people, right? And we are. Hey, the storm is not over yet, right? I'm piloting the ship as best as I can, but I'm also aware that it's scary. It is deeply scary. It keeps me up at night. Every single time, it's like, well, this is how we're holding it together. It's scary. And then also, there's just a level of also, we are working with China. We're working with Chinese manufacturers. We're working with companies that I don't know. I can't personally vet the ethical quality of the goddamn, like, enormous ecosystem that is necessary to make Yazebas, right? Like, when you make a little zine, you know everyone involved in that project. You can go and talk to the printing company and see the people working there. But with a big thing like this, like I am divorced from this manufacturing process. And so there's ethical worries there, right? I'm always, it would break my heart to know that there are people who are hurt through the creation of this.
Yeah.
It's heavy. I can't remember if you put this exactly last time we talked about, but I feel like there was a comparison between Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, the fictional imaginative space, and the group of people behind the creation of this project. And I'm curious if that parallel holds for you, or like maybe how it's changed.
I mean, I feel like Yazeba at this point. Like I literally, I was so in 2022, immediately after the crowdfunding, I was so burnt out on games and this game work that I truly felt like I sold my heart to make this thing, and now I feel like I don't have any love left for it. And so for the past 2 years, it's been like me doing a big restorative project of like, how do I rekindle my love for games? And I feel much more secure and all that now. But there's something very funny to me about, oh yeah, I sold my heart to make the bed and breakfast, right? Like both Yazeba sold her heart to make the bed and breakfast within the fiction, and I sold my heart to make the bed and breakfast the physical object, you know?
But after a long march of days, a strange thing happened.
Exactly. And so now I'm like, I'm cool with it, right? I fixed up my heart. It's all good. I put stickers and band-aids on it. So I feel better. But it's still, there's a deeply personal and intimate level of like, you look at characters and you know them, and they make choices and you know them. And there's a funny thing where people will ask me questions like, oh, well, what's this character's favorite food or whatever. I immediately know, right? Like I can just rattle off what I think any opinion held by any Yazeba's character would be. It's just, there's something in there that is just like modeling all of them for me. And so there's an intimacy of like, I think everyone involved, even to the smallest degree, has like a character that they love and a character that they've contributed a little bit to.
I suppose this is a little bit of a cheesy question as we come to a close, but in this arduous, long, fulfilling and stressful and delightful and terrible all at the same time process of funding to fulfillment, what was the biggest, like, who was it, or what was it someone said that was like a key piece of support, advice, something that got you through at a really hard moment in that process? Something or someone.
I mean, Grubby. Like my business, all right, Grubby is she we met when I was 12 and she was 15 or 16. And we were in a LARP and she was playing Harpy and she ripped my heart out. And then we met again in college when she was a senior and I was a freshman at the same small college. And she gave me a giant, like 2-liter bottle of red wine. She was like, use this to make friends. And then we met again when we were both put on the same board, the freaking volunteer board for picking LARPs for our summer camp. And we sat together and we each got ourselves a martini. We were on voice call. And we were going through all the old games that were submitted in years past and talking shit and drinking martinis or margaritas, I think. And then she is a brilliant mind. She is practical when she needs to be and imaginative when she needs to be. She hates RPGs, which is why when I know that I make one that I showed her and she likes it, that I've nailed it. I don't think there was a moment of advice that I can remember, although I'm sure I received a lot of good advice from a lot of people. But for me, I'm going to be the one who gets a lot of the credit because I'm the famous person at Possum Creek and I'm the face. And that's the role I play. That's my responsibility with the company, is to be the shield and the buffer and the public persona. But Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast is just as much, if not more, composed of grubby blood, sweat, and tears, right? Taking in a an impossible dream and rendering it into a beautiful bed. Like the book is the game, is the bed and breakfast, right? These things are all continuous. The book in your hands is the bed and breakfast. It's got closets and corners and foyers and people who live in there and weird secrets if you know where to look. And she made the book the bed and breakfast, right? Like for me, it's like I always knew that's what I wanted it to be, but she did it, right? So she did a miracle. She turned a pile of paper and ink into a house. And she did that like 8,000 times or whatever the hell print run it. So that's I think it's grubby. She's brilliant.
I love that.
I feel like I should move us to a close because we're right about it at the time limit. Man, we could talk about this literally all day. I mean, this is the third of what will likely be a much longer series of conversation.
This beats me having to make my own podcast. So you can just have me back whenever, and I'll have
perfect.
Yeah, you can just invite me on. And I'll be like, yes, I get to talk about things. I love talking about games.
Jay, thank you so much for coming on again. We're obviously going to have you on many more times on this show because you're such a joy to talk to. We always end this podcast with one last question, which is, what are you bringing to the table? And this is just our cute way of asking, what's a person, a game, a show, a resource, something in the tabletop or outside of tabletop that you're excited about right now and want to recommend to the audience?
Everyone should go play Last Train to Bremen by Kara Assertion. Incredible game. I've got my grubby little eyes on it. We'll see what happens in the future, but it's a phenomenal game. It just came out on itch.io. It is a 4-player game where you are a band that made a deal with the devil and you fucked it. You fucked up the deal. And now you are hiding in a train car on your way to Bremen, which is the last place that you can go to get out of the deal with the devil. And it's Liar's Dice. If you know the gambling game Liar's Dice.
Oh, sure.
You're doing that. But the thing you're gambling with is basically your memories with each other. And so you're just locked in this box where you're just building up resentment as you like remember the times you fucked each other over, and you're playing this dice game. And then at the end, the last person to survive has to fight the devil. Very good. Fantastic game.
Yeah, we're gonna be linking that in the show notes there. You guys should be checking that out. I'll be checking it out today.
That's so cool.
That's great. I love that. As ever, thank you, Jay, so much for coming to the table. You want to let the people know where they can find you online if they're looking for you?
Thank you so much for having me. You can find me. I'm going to shout out the Possum Creek Patreon, patreon.com/Possum Creek. That is, I moderate a phenomenal community. There's a ton of great designers. As a part of that, there's a Discord that's really good. I put up a lot of my early stuff during this. I referenced a 7-part pack a bit. That is available right now. It's in incomplete and kind of a jumbled form, but like a game that would otherwise not be out for another 5 years is sitting on Patreon for anyone who wants to spend $50. I've got a lot of phenomenal games on there. I've got a lot of things that I wrote kind of like, it's hard to release other stuff. Well, Yazeba's in the background. So I've kind of built up this backlog of games that at some point I'll put out. And so I'm just saying it's a phenomenal index. You should go check it out. Also, I can't really plug it anywhere else because Patreon tends to get delisted on Twitter. So plugging it here. Also, follow me on Twitter at jdragsky. Like the only J-Drag in the world. I think that's not true. There's an architect in Chicago named J-Dragon, which is bizarre. You can follow me on Tumblr. I'm on Tumblr again, jdragsky, and you can send me emails if you'd like at j@possumcreekgames.com.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah. I will endorse the Possum Creek Patreon because the articles and blog posts you write are such great education for anyone who wants to be in game design.
I'm pretty proud of my output.
Yeah.
And I will remind everyone that if you have enjoyed this conversation and want to buy Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, it is policy on My First Dungeon and on Talking the Table that you must buy 2 copies of Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast, one to play and one to eat.
Yes.
Oh God! Eating Yazeba's Bed and Breakfast would be a nightmare.
You're gonna need a lot of barbecue
Food
sauce, but it's so good you simply must eat it, and you have to have one to play.
Yeah, I got the plate picked out and everything.
Thicker than the PHP. This thing's thicker than a monster manual. This is like
Listen,
busty.
I'm not saying it's one meal. It could be a week's worth of meal prep, but
she's
you gotta eat it.
She's leftover.
This girl's
This
a
girl's
big-
leftover.
Invite all your friends over. You need a carving knife. Good God.
So sharpen up your knives and get ready for Yazeba's bed and breakfast. But if you want more gaming content from us, you can check out the 20-sided newsletter or the Many-Sided Media Discord. We always have great conversations about all of these Talk at the Table episodes there. Those are both linked in our show notes. As always, rate, review, and follow Talk at the Table wherever you get your podcasts. And that's what the table is talking about. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
You like us. You really like us. At least, I assume that you do, as you've listened to every minute of this episode. And yet you haven't already left us a 5-star review? Ugh. Well, what are you waiting for? Get over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave that review now. It's always wonderful to hear words from our adoring fans. Getting more ratings helps people find the show and love it as well. And we love to hear your nice words. So head over to Spotify and Apple Podcasts and leave us that 5-star review. Ta-ta!